Star Wars 7x7 episode 2140. Alright, is Boba Fett actually alive? Let's just settle this once and for all, at least as far as it can be settled. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So, with the news, or with the rumor I guess I should say, since it hasn't been officially confirmed, but with the rumor that Temuera Morrison will be joining the cast of The Mandalorian for Season 2, and that allegedly he'll be playing the role of Boba Fett, I thought it would be worth taking a look at the question of whether Boba Fett is actually alive, which, yeah, I guess if we're hearing that Boba Fett is supposed to be in The Mandalorian Season 2, then he is alive, but that's kind of a squirrely question because there's Boba Fett the man and there's Boba Fett the armor, and so this can get a little bit dicey. Let's start out by what we actually know. Boba Fett and his armor went into the Sarlacc pit in Return of the Jedi, and that was supposed to be a death sentence for him. Apparently not. What we learned from the Aftermath novels by Chuck Wendig is that the Sarlacc itself was damaged when the katana, that would be Jabba's sail barge, was destroyed. A bunch of wreckage flew into it, and Jawas subsequently came after part of the body was exposed and cut it open and salvaged a bunch of stuff out of there. Now, in one of the interludes in the first Aftermath novel, there's a scene that takes place inside a Jawa sandcrawler, and it's a sandcrawler that presumably has Jawas who were pillaging the innards of the Sarlacc. In that sandcrawler, we see a box of Mandalorian armor, or at least one is discovered and argued about, etc., etc. Chuck Wendig has never said publicly whether this is in fact Boba Fett's armor. It is scarred and damaged, and that's as much as we really know about it. We don't know about its color even, so there's no way to tie it to Boba Fett for sure. But I think the implication, just generally speaking, has been very strong that this is Boba Fett's armor, but it leaves the question, where is Boba Fett himself? So there is no current canon storyline where Boba Fett is actually alive. There was another interlude in the Aftermath novels where two bounty hunters are fighting and one bounty hunter said, "Look, Boba Fett!" in a way to get one up on the other bounty hunter, but Boba Fett wasn't actually there, it was just a ruse. So as far as official storytelling goes, Boba Fett is basically the equivalent of Schrödinger's cat right now. We last saw him in the Sarlacc pit. He's either alive or he's dead, but we won't know until we actually observe him once and for all. However, in stuff that's on Wookieepedia about Boba Fett, there's one thing that says in a DVD commentary for Return of the Jedi that George Lucas originally wanted to show Boba Fett getting out of the Sarlacc pit, but he was afraid that if he showed that, then people watching the film would expect him to show up later in the film, and so that's why he never showed Boba Fett getting out of the Sarlacc. But in his mind, Boba Fett survived. And then the Wookieepedia entry also makes note of an Ask Me Anything, an AMA session on Reddit with J.W. Rinzler, who of course famously wrote a bunch of the making of Star Wars books. And according to Rinzler, Lucas says that Boba Fett is alive and alive in the new canon. So this interview took place in July of 2014, which was about 3 months after Disney rebooted the Star Wars canon. And again, according to what's in Wookieepedia about this AMA session, Rinzler says that Lucas considers Boba Fett alive in the new canon. And considering the close personal connection and the close professional collaboration between George Lucas and Dave Filoni, I think it's safe to say that if Lucas believes Boba Fett is alive, then chances are Dave Filoni believes he's alive as well, and that would lead him to consider the possibility of integrating Boba Fett into The Mandalorian. The next question for us is, the Boba Fett that we're seeing in The Mandalorian, is it actually Boba Fett? Or is it somebody in Boba Fett's armor, like Cobb Vanth, for example, who again, as I said earlier, is not confirmed to be in Boba Fett's armor, but it's certainly strongly implied. So for it to be the complete Boba Fett that we last saw in Return of the Jedi, the actual person Boba Fett would have to have escaped from the Sarlacc pit, but somehow without his armor, and then would have had to find his way back through the Dune Sea to wherever this free town was set up where Cobb Vanth was a sheriff, and take the armor back in some fashion. And there is another possibility as well, that being that maybe Boba Fett the person is in a different set of Mandalorian armor and has just accentuated it with the traditional spurs that we're used to with Boba Fett in his previous incarnation. This would not be the first time that Boba Fett has had a change in a suit of armor. He inherited Jango Fett's armor, so he had Jango Fett's armor originally, and except for the helmet, which he tried to use as a bomb to blow up Mace Windu, that didn't work. But he had that armor, and then eventually at some point acquired the armor with which we associate him. May have happened in one of the untold story arcs of the Clone Wars, in fact. And one other bit of information that relates to The Mandalorian Season 2, if it is in fact Boba Fett the person, he would be 42 years old at the time of his appearance in universe. And so there you go. That's what we know that's relevant about the potential for Boba Fett to appear in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. Boba Fett, the Schrödinger's cat of Star Wars. And that's going to do it for this episode of the show as well. Just one last request for you. If you have not yet rated the show on your podcast app of choice, I hope you will consider doing that. I hope you'll consider 5 stars, but be honest. I'd rather you be honest. But hey, here's hoping for 5. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always, and may the curve be flattening for you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.